Hi, and welcome to my January reading wrap-up. I usually do put this in my full monthly wrap-up videos, but I decided to kind of separate the books from that video just because I usually tend to read a lot of books and I want to talk a lot about the books, but I never feel like I have time because then the videos end up being like a half hour long. So this should help consolidate the times of the videos and let me be able to speak more about the videos. I read a total of 6 books. Now the first book I read achieves part of my goal for the year, which is I want to read one nonfiction book a month. And so this is the nonfiction book that I read for the month of January, and that is Buffering by Hannah Hart. Hannah Hart is a YouTuber. She has a channel called My Drunk Kitchen where she basically just gets drunk and cooks, but she has a lot of like life lessons within the cooking. It's very funny and I absolutely love her as a YouTuber. I don't really watch her videos that often. I kind of just watch them in like spurts, but I do enjoy her very much. And I did get a chance to meet her where she signed my book, and she was just a very lovely human being. And I was really excited to get a chance to read this book. It obviously took me a while to read it, but I eventually have read it, and I really loved it. It was not what I was expecting, because usually when YouTubers write memoirs, they're somewhat interesting, but like all the same and very like bland. But this one was definitely a lot more thought-provoking than the others. She talked a lot about her past and her childhood, where she dealt with her mom who had schizophrenia and her dad who was a Jehovah's Witness, and just living in extreme poverty as well. I did not know a lot about her past and her life and how it shaped her to who she is today, and it just made me see her in a whole different way and have so much more respect for her. I mean, granted, I did have respect for her before, but this just definitely, it also made me just like a bigger fan of hers than I already was. It was so honest and so raw, and just, it made me feel a lot of feelings. The only issue I did have with it was I was kind of just hoping it would be a chronological order, because I found myself a lot of the times reading it just being confused as to where we were in her life, like what had happened before then, what had happened after that. Like, I was just a little confused, so I just wish it had been more in chronological order. But other than that, it was just absolutely a wonderful read, so I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read is actually another nonfiction book. I guess I just decided to read 2 nonfiction books, and that is Furiously Happy by Jenny Lawson. I had like seen it around, I just never had the urge to pick it up. It wasn't until my friend Thompson, who recommended this book to me, where I finally picked it up. And Thompson has recommended other books to me that I absolutely love, so I very much trust her opinion when she recommends a book to me. I'm really happy she recommended this to me because it was a phenomenal book. This is just basically what it says here, a funny book about horrible things. Jenny Lawson talks about her dealing with mental illness, but in a very hilarious way. She has a bunch of different stories in here. I definitely want to read her other book. This is one of those books where you actually laugh out loud reading it. It's so funny, even though it is about horrible things. But she is just, there is no one in the world like her. For sure. No one in the world like her. So definitely go pick this up if you can. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read is Saga Volume 3 by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. This is the 3rd in the graphic novel series called Saga, and it's about like a sci-fi Romeo and Juliet. It's basically how I'll describe it, but it's not so much focused on the romance, it's more focused on the war and the adventure. So this just continues with it. I read volumes 1 and 2 last year and very much enjoyed them, and so I just really want to continue on with the series, and I did, so I picked up 3. Look at these illustrations. They're so cool. And like, this story in general just has so many layers, and you follow so many characters, and it's just, it is also definitely for adults because there is some sexual stuff in here. It's a really great story and such a fun ride, and I'm really hoping I can get to 4 through 8 for the rest of this year. The only thing is, I like the fact that this doesn't focus around romance so much, but this book definitely introduced a lot more romance coming around the corner, and less on the adventure side, so I decided to give this 4.5 stars. The next book I read is Snow Falling by Jane Gloriana Villanueva, aka Jane from Jane the Virgin. So if this cover looks familiar to you, it's because you probably watched the show Jane the Virgin. And in the TV show Jane the Virgin, Jane writes a book and it gets published, and this is the book that she publishes in the show, and it was just very exciting when I saw this in the bookstore, because I did not think that they actually published it in real life. I had to pick it up and I had to read it the day I picked it up, and that's exactly what I did, and I finished it, and I'm honestly very disappointed. This, I mean, it is basically like the story of Jane the Virgin. It's basically the show. It's got the like love triangle going, it's got the pregnancy, it's got the show in it. But the issue I had with it is the writing. It was terrible writing. Like, it was written like it was trying to be good writing, like by putting a lot of descriptors and I'm like, no, you're trying too hard. This was literally just trying too hard to be good writing, and it just turned into absolutely terrible writing. It was hard to be able to get through this book just because the writing was so horrible. And so now, I mean, it's upsetting because now when I watch the TV show and they like praise the book, I'm like, no, it's a terrible book. So that kind of ruined the show a little bit for me, which is upsetting because I love this show so much. It's one of my favorite shows. I was not a fan, so 2 out of 5 stars. The next book I read is Batman Nightwalker by Marie Lu. This book actually did come out this month. I was pretty excited about it. I mean, I'm not a huge Batman fan, but I am a huge Marie Lu fan. I was a fan of the first book in this DC Icon series, which was Wonder Woman Warbringer by Leigh Bardugo, which I talked about last year. I very much enjoyed that story, and so I was kind of hoping to like this one. And I did enjoy it. I am so happy I picked it up. It's a lot shorter than I wanted it to be. I definitely wanted it to be a lot longer and make the story just go on a little bit more. But it was definitely a very fun ride. This takes place with Batman in his teenage years, and he's kind of more like a detective in this series than a superhero, which was very, very interesting to read and see. And of course, reading Batman in his like angsty years is very fun. And I absolutely loved the villain, Madeline. I would also love a book from her perspective. I feel like that would be super fun. So Marie Lu, if you ever get the chance to write a perspective from Madeline's point of view, I would very much read it and very much want it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I loved the writing. I loved the action-packed story. The pacing was just amazing in this story. I just wish it had been longer. And the last book that I read this month, As Bright as Heaven by Susan Meisner. My friend Thompson, who I talked about earlier in this video, she, for my birthday, got me 3 months for free for the Book of the Month Club, and I am very much enjoying the Book of the Month Club, so thank you, Thompson. But this is the first book I chose from the Book of the Month Club. It takes place in the 1920s in Philadelphia during the time of the Great War. I believe it's World War II, because I think they were talking about fighting Germany. But we mainly follow 4 perspectives. We follow this family, like the mom and her 3 daughters. We follow all their perspectives. And I liked that aspect of it, where instead of following the men who went off to war and like following the war, we mainly followed the women who stayed home and dealing with the Spanish flu. That is the main part of this story, is dealing with the Spanish flu. But it's mainly kind of like about following these women during the time of the Spanish flu and then 7 years after the flu, and kind of seeing how the things that they did and the things they experienced during the time of the flu affected their future. It fell for me because it was very boring. It was a very boring book. It didn't get exciting until literally like maybe the last 50 pages of the book. I think it was like, I don't know, maybe even the last like 40 pages. It didn't get exciting until the very end, and I just wish it had been filled with that excitement and that drama and that, like so much is going on in the last 50 pages of the book, but the rest of the 350 pages just were so boring, and it was so difficult to get through just because it was so boring and it was just very slow reading. But it definitely is thought-provoking, and I very much enjoyed the fact that we see the consequences of what they did during the Spanish flu. I'm not going to talk about what happened because obviously I don't want to ruin it for people who want to read it. But seeing the consequences of what they did during the Spanish flu, I really liked that aspect of it, and that made it very interesting. There is also some romance in this, which I enjoyed because I do like a little bit of romance here and there. But yeah, no, it was very boring, so I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. So that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe. Also, please check out the movies that I watched last month, as well as just my favorites of the month, to just go and check those videos out. And I will see you guys later with another video. Okay, bye!